difficulties. It is muggy and hot. Is this thing working? What happened, everybody? If everybody's having a fantastic start to your week. Take two. So this is an encore shot. The reason for this is, well, somehow or another, Saturday's live stream got a little bit messed up. So we're going to do this again. I'm not going to get too deep into the show tonight. Gary's already first in. What up? Got the flex. I like it. So the topic of the show Saturday was, what kind of performance gains can you expect, with your Mopar? What can you expect if you're going to do a tune or a manifold or long tubes or all this other stuff? So I wanted to get into that, but before I do, I really have got to talk about dynos. I kid you not, I get, and this is what I was trying to say on Saturday's video. About every other day, on average, I'll get questions about how much power will X modification get me? And the problem is that the goal is always almost universally the same. I want to make 500 horsepower to the rear wheels. How do I go about doing that? And I mean, it's so often that you almost just kind of go, you just want to hit like the play button on, anyway, I digress. Like I said, I get a bit lost for words sometimes because I literally get it so often. So the problem is dynos, first and foremost. You can't really talk horsepower gains. You can't even talk about a goal to get, for example, 500 horsepower on it to the rear wheels. The reason why is because dynos vary so much with how they read. Perfect example of that on a inertia style dyno, the old DynoJet 248. Those dynos are typically pretty kind is a fair word to use here for how they will give a number. And they're typically going to be the highest number showing dynos. So a lot of shops will use a 248 dyno, a DynoJet 248 to say, oh yeah, we made 490 horsepower to the rear wheels. Okay, well, the thing is that same 490 horsepower on an inertia style dyno might be 450 horsepower. Heck, it could even be 430 horsepower. And so you have to have a baseline to start out with. But what I was trying to convey on the live show, and I didn't even bring it it's in the office, is just how easy it is to have the exact same combination make two completely different numbers. So I'm going to have to do the same damn thing I did on Saturday. Let me go get that spreadsheet. Talk amongst yourselves. I'll be right back. Let me go get it so I can show you exactly what I'm talking about. All right. So one of the issues you run into is even on the exact same dyno. See, this is where things really go completely wrong, is people go, well, it's on the same dyno. Okay. This is the exact same combination on the exact same dyno. One person, yours truly, set the car up, and that's the one that is the blue line, I think. Yeah. Well, actually, it's the dotted line. Somebody else set the other car up on the dyno. Exact same combination. Now, the solid line, notice how it's making less torque down low, but more horsepower up top? So that's the exact same combination with just two different ways of setting the car up on the dyno. So you can't even use the argument of, well, the car was on the exact same dyno, because even that doesn't matter. So just Think of it like this. If you're going to talk about gains, unless the car is literally sitting on the dyno while you work on it, and then you run it again after it's been set up, it's going to be very difficult to get solid data, but you can get close. But again, it's a question of consistency. And I am going to speak on gains in terms of percentages, all right? Because without getting into numbers, you can figure a percentage pretty well in your head. Now, how your local dyno reads and who's setting the car up on the dyno and what other issues you may run into in dealing with dyno, problems that you will have. That's up to you, but I want to speak at least in terms of percentages that I know of. So we're going to talk a little bit about 5.7, primarily talking about 6.4, because that's really the core of the questions that I get is 6.4 questions. I'd say, speaking of percentages, I'd say probably 70% of the questions I get are on the 392s. And for every percentage that I give you, add a couple of more percentage for the 5.7 cars. They typically will pick up a little bit more for every modification. So let's get into it. So that we can kind of have a baseline of where we're working with. I've seen bone stock 392 cars put down anywhere from 435 horsepower to the rear wheels, all the way down to as low as about 378 horsepower. So we'll go 380, 430. Let's meet somewhere in the middle and just call it 400, because I've seen a lot of 400 and a lot of 405 horsepower cars on varying dynos. So we're going to use 400 just for a safe place to start, and then we'll just go with the percentages from there. So where do you start? Well, you can't do anything downstream until you get a tune. So what'll a tune give you? Well, the 392 is already in a pretty solid state of tune. There are things that you can do in the tune to get more power out of the car, but typically about the best you can hope for is going to be a couple of percentage points. So say 8 horsepower, maybe a little bit more than that to the rear wheels. Again, the 5.7 may pick up, 8 or 9% to the rear wheels. So right now, I'm sorry, not 8 or 9%, 8 or 9 horsepower to the rear wheels. So, say 3%. By the way, a typical 5.7 powered contraption on this hypothetical dyno will make somewhere around 3.25 horse. So just use that number, throw your percentages on there, and then let her ride. Okay. So that couple of percent gets you, let's say 8 horsepower. So now you're at roughly 408, maybe 410, but let's not get greedy, call it 408. But the thing is it's not a question of horsepower. By the way, yes, we are near Velocito, and we've had a couple of clear nights, and there's been a lot of folks out playing around. So after the live show, that's what I'll be doing. Anyway, that's what I was doing earlier too. But the main thing to consider is transmission tuning, throttle response. All of that is going to make a much bigger difference than any power gain that you get from a tune. You got to remember that the 392s are already coming into this party more or less maxed out, not too maxed out in the tune, but they've got a little bit less meat on the bone than the 5.7 does. But anyway, there's your power gains. And again, I'm mainly speaking to the dyno guys here. Quarter mile, we can talk that at some other time, but mainly just talking power numbers here. So now let's start getting into bolt-ons. What about cold air kits, air filters, things like that? To be real honest with you guys, the only system that I've ever seen that actually worked in real life is the Hellcat airbox and the Hellcat filter. That being said, as I wag my finger, that being said, you can see sometimes a gain if you just stick an old school pipe and filter on the end of the end of the throttle body. You kind of know what I'm talking about here. Just the cheap pipe and filter. On the dyno, you might see maybe 1 full percentage point out of that, pick up maybe, 4 horsepower or something like that. Thing is once you close the hood, that gain goes right away. A typical Hellcat airbox Hellcat filter, you might see 1%, maybe 1%. I'm going to give you 1% just because we've already talked about the tune. That's going to bring us up to roughly 3%. So you're looking at about 12 horsepower between the tune, box, filter, snorkel combination. Again, with the 5.7, you're looking at maybe, about the same, about 1.5%, because the air needs of that smaller engine just don't really do a whole lot for you with that. In terms of, just total airflow, things like that. One thing I will caution you guys on, K&N filters, green filters. If you've got a K&N, make sure you keep it clean. And if you've got a green filter, I would really only suggest using that at the racetrack, because it doesn't filter anything. And if you've got a Hellcat, which we're not even talking about really tonight, but I wouldn't run a K&N or a green filter, run the stock filter, because I've got data that shows that those filters actually make less power. So just saying. Oh, and by the way, I did the same test with no filter, and it also made less power in terms of data log than the stock filter and stock airbox. Who'd have thunk it, right? So we talked about the airbox. What about an intake manifold, porting, or a larger throttle body? Unless you are port matching the throttle body to the intake manifold, you will get absolutely no gain out of a throttle body. And depending on how jacked up your intake manifold is, will determine how much gain you get from a throttle body and intake manifold. You guys know that I'm on record as saying that that is a supporting modification, and it's really just blueprinting the runners. You're basically kind of port matching, but really not, because there's no gasket to open it up to. But you are cleaning up, blueprinting the intake manifold and opening up the throat and just trying to get it to flow more. And it's tough to do because the 6.4 is kind of a jinky design as it kind of flows in, down, back, around, and into the plenum. But all in, if you're doing good if you pick up another 1% at that point. But this is still a stacking percent. It wouldn't be uncommon to go from 412 to 416, 417 in this case. Now with your tune, your airbox, and your intake manifold and your throttle body. So what's next? Well, now we're going to start getting into some spency parts and some stuff that is going to definitely, you're going to need a little bit more skill to install. And this is typically when you're going to start taking it to a shop. I feel pretty confident with most guys installing an intake manifold, although the short runner valve thing to pop off is a freaking nightmare, just because you got to be able to have like 3 or 4 joints in your arm to get back there. But I would feel pretty confident with all of that. Being said, that's the limit for most guys. Now let's talk about long tubes, pulleys, things like that. Long tube headers, you guys have to understand, for the 6.4 crowd, there is no horsepower gain and a mild torque gain from going with long tube headers. You got to remember that what's happening is when you see the tests, they're also going in with a tune. Most of the gains that they pick up are with the tune and all the other supporting mods, not the headers. But don't let anybody tell you that long tube headers are a useless modification on a 6.4. Where long tube headers really have a place is in drivability. This is really more a drivability mod more than anything else. And we're talking tip-in throttle response, light engine loads, transitional throttle movements. That's where long tubes really help. At the top end of the horsepower, you're not going to see any gain up there. In fact, the way that the horsepower curve will arc over, it'll almost look like it's losing just a little bit of horsepower at the very top. They do nose over a little bit harder. I'm not going to go into the physics and all the reasons why. Just know that that is a thing that long tubes can do. But what they do is down low, you will gain torque. And that's because of the scavenging that you'll get out of the long tubes. What you have to remember is that the 6.4 has got a very wide lobe separation angle. It doesn't offer very much area for scavenging. And, without much area, there's not much time for scavenging. The higher the RPM, the faster the time is, and you just don't get that scavenging effect up at the very top end of the RPM. Plus, now the exhaust has to flow through a runner that's that long, and that's restrictive. That does create a restriction at the higher RPM levels, whereas down low, it promotes scavenging and you pick up power. Longer runners, longer tubes on the headers will always pick up torque down low. So we've talked about the headers, exhaust systems. Now, I can't really sign off on any bolt-on exhaust system. There's very few that pick up any power, if at all. The stock system is basically a MagnaFlow straight through system if you compare the two, side-by-side flow and everything else. So from a performance standpoint, you're just really not going to get there from here. And by the way, don't think I've forgotten about you guys wondering about intake manifolds. I'll go ahead and talk about them, but again, for the stock stuff, I'm not gonna get into intake manifolds because here's the thing. I haven't seen anybody have any real luck, any real gains with the Edelbrock intake on a stock displacement 392, that intake versus the variable runner intake. The other thing is the sniper intake. Unless you've got a stroker combination and you are really spooling the thing up to a decent RPM, or if you've got a cam in that car that has got a real tight lobe separation angle that's going to try to make peak power, like the cam is wanting to make peak power at 5,500 RPM, and it's got this huge wave right there in the middle of the mid-range. That intake is not going to do you a lot of good. It'll help stretch out a cam that's got a real tight lobe separation angle, but you have to cam that thing for the intake manifold when it's got such a short runner like that. Actually, it's about like that. It's about 6 inches long. So a cam like that is going to be real just raunchy to drive on the streets and be a pain in the ass to tune. I just don't think it would really be worth it on the street. Now, you want to talk about race applications and things like that, you can probably get into it. Stroker application, I can see where some guys would get into that, but to be honest with you, on the street, not there. And I'm kind of keeping this budget friendly too. But we're going to get to a point where budget isn't friendly anymore, and it's coming up here in just a second. So, you figure with all of those gains that we talked about, oh, by the way, gains in terms of torque, maybe a couple of percent, or maybe 1.5%, just call it one. I'm not going to oversell this. So you've got a gain there, but we're talking horsepower, so I'm really just kind of leave it there. You've got pulleys, the underdrive pulleys. Those are good for about 1%, give or take. So all in with everything that we've talked about so far, we're going to just talk full bolt-on, soup to nuts type deal. If you put down 400 to the rear wheels, by the time it's all said and done, you might pick up, let me think about this. You'd pick up about maybe, I'm just going to cut to the chase here, 6%, 7% at the most, like at the very most. And this is on a real kind dyno. So let's say that you've gone from this hypothetical 400 horsepower to say you picked up 5%, call it 420, okay? So now we're sitting at somewhere around 420 horsepower with your, 1% here, 2% there, 1% there, 1% there, whatever. You picked up a total of 5 and you're at 20 horsepower. So what's next? Well, first thing guys start talking about are camshafts. What would a camshaft get you in this scenario? Well, depending on the camshaft in total, now keep in mind, we're going to add percentage points to what we already have. You may pick up another 10% on top of where you were before, or where you started out from, I should say. So, you might be sitting at around 450, 460 at this point. In essence, you are not going to get any more than 15% from where you started to where you're going to end, all right? So that 15% doesn't sound like a lot, right? I mean, it doesn't. But when you work the math back, you're picking up about 60 horsepower to the rear wheels. So the thing is that, is it worth it? Well, in the grand scheme of things, the game that you are trying to play, you're basically paying $100 per horsepower. And most cam swaps, along with everything else that goes along with it, the tune, the headers, the this, the that, the whatnot, you're going to be in that $6,000 to $7,000 range. And so there you go. I mean, you're going to be picking up your 15%. And again, it is going to be 15% from where you started from as a baseline. And even that is a little bit sketchy because, again, I go back to this exhibit down here where the exact, and I mean the exact same combination run on the exact same dyno, but with the only issue being that one person set one up, I set the dotted line car up, somebody else set the car up with the regular straight line, and you can see that it's an inconsistent result. And by the way, you can see that in the fact that the cars were run to the exact same RPM, but look at how one is extended more than the other. You can see what's going on there. It's in wheel sense mode. So keep that in the back of your mind, but I'm just trying to bring y'all up to speed as far as what you can expect, because I shit you not, I get this question over and over and over again, and I'm wanting to be fair and give everybody a solid, strong assessment about what their car is going to make and what they can expect. Now, guys, you know me, I'm the guy that says, don't worry about all that, take it to the drag strip. Put a drag pack on the car. If you want your car to go faster, you've got to pull a little bit of weight out of it. Get a drag pack wheel and tire setup on the thing. Get it to go down the track and run the thing stock. Get your density altitude information, do your modifications, and then run it again. And keep track of it. It's a lot of fun, especially when you start to see gains with just the small bolt-on things. Now, we've talked about cams, we've talked about everything else under the sun, your garden variety Mopar hot rod. Now we got to start talking about stuff that gets really expensive. We're talking stroker kits and blowers. Here's the thing. You're going to spend a lot of money either way you decide to go with this. I don't have a girl working your corner. It is making no difference to me. Somebody says they got a 426. Somebody says they have a Pro Charger. Whatever. If you're into the NA thing, just know that your engine displacement doesn't go up very much when you go from basically 392 to 426. you're coming in at about a 10% displacement increase. So don't expect your power to go up by 25%. Ain't gonna happen. It's gonna go up by about 10%. Now, granted, yes, now you can run the different intake if you want, and now you can run a much more aggressive cam and still have something that's gonna have some semblance of streetability. In that respect, you can pick up another 12%, maybe even 13%, but you have to remember that you're going from our now 460-ish horsepower and again, we started out at 400, we got to 460. Now we're going to talk about something that's making another, I don't know, 50, 60 horsepower. So now you're up to, let's call it 520 as opposed to 460. That's where you're at with your stroker motor. Well, what about if you went with a supercharger? Well, drag the thing back, and the typical walking around number is 135 horsepower is typically what we would see to the rear wheels. Again, your results will vary, but you can look at a 25% gain, or at least a 20% gain, as a pretty easy number to roll around in. Actually, it's going to be more like 25. 20% be pretty low, which is going to get you at least another 125 to your 460. So 460, 560, 580 to the wheels in this, hypothetical scenario. In other words, more than the stroker. But a blower is going to cost you about 10 grand realistically, because you're going to want to go with the race intercooler, D1X at least. Obviously, you don't need an F1. But now you're going to start looking at issues with transmission, half shafts. No, I probably wouldn't say half shafts, drive shafts. Mainly if you're running on the street, you don't have anything to worry about. But if you're going to the drag strip, you might. Here's the other thing. The supercharger picking up 135 horsepower, it sounds like a lot, or 125, whatever number we want to agree on. It sounds like a lot, but it doesn't feel like a lot when you drive the car. Just know that coming into it. It's going to be faster, but it just may not feel faster. And that's just a symptom of how those superchargers put power to the ground. It's a rising boost curve. It's a nice push, and it will push your RPM out a little bit, but you're not going to pick up that butt dyno sense of really hard acceleration. Just isn't going to overwhelm you. But anyway, there you have it with all of that. So when we start talking about money, though, you have to remember that, that 10 grand is now stacked on top of the roughly 6 grand that you spent to get your 60 horsepower. Now you've got $16,000 into this thing, and you haven't even put a tire on it, which you're absolutely going to need. If you're going to be taking it to the drag strip, buying your drag pack, that's another chunk of coin that you're going to need, plus any other doodads and tidbits that you want to throw at the thing. In other words, you still haven't bought everything that you need. Well, 16 large is damn near the difference between a 392 powered whatever it is and a Hellcat. And I know you want to say, Hellcat, all that money, Hellcat guys think they're the shit. Well, look, here's the thing. Everybody is still chasing the Hellcat. Hellcat is, and for a long, long time, will be the yardstick that every other car is going to be measured by when you are testing it at the drag strip. The street, roll racing, that's not the theater that car plays in. We're talking about drag strip. That's what that car does best. And just being a real treat to drive, and does great on long trips, but that's beside the point. So what about the 5.7 guys? Well, guys, I don't want y'all to think I forgot about the 5.7 stuff. I'd never do. In fact, I've been seriously contemplating a 5.7 build, but who's got the time and who's got the space? Seems like I've got this place, I already need one twice as big. So all in, you can maybe get a 5.7 up to around what a stock 392 will put to the ground. A little bit more than that maybe. We're talking full house exhaust cam, ported intake, throttle body, you name it, it's done to the car. Everything done, full house kit build, you're looking at somewhere around 405 horsepower. So maybe 410. So just the other side of what a 6.4 would make, but it would be an effort. And again, with the amount of money that you would spend on that car, you could have got a 6.4. It's kind of funny how even with modifications, the cars are pretty well separated. So I'm hoping that helps out. A lot of times when I start talking to guys and I'm trying to walk them through combinations, walk them through what to expect, the whole care and feeding of your new hot rod Hemi, it's real difficult for me to gauge where they're coming from, where they're at, what kind of expectations that they have. And invariably, the conversation always goes to horsepower. How much power will this get? How much will that get? And I can't even come close to telling you because, guys, I have been in and around this business longer than I can remember, to be honest with you. And I have never seen, let me not say never. The only dyno that I've ever seen that read very consistently, and the only dynos that I've ever seen read consistently are old school Dyno Jet 248s because there's nothing to adjust. You park your thing on the dyno, it spins a drum, and it gives you a number. Most of those guys run the numbers in either standard correction or in uncorrected. It doesn't care what's going on around it. Anyway, so just take dyno numbers with a grain of salt. I've seen guys, this is no joke, I've seen guys get physically just like ill, like sick over what their cars have made on a dyno. And, they were promised one thing, something else happens, and then they get all pissed. Well, it's not the car's fault. It's not the tuner's fault. It's not the part's fault. It's just the fact that dynos read weird, man. And you got to go off of percentages. And even then, you just got to know that whoever's doing this is doing the best job that they can for you. Let your butt dyno be the main thing that gets you there because that's really all you're not going to be driving this thing around on a dyno. But the most important thing, get that thing to the drag strip if at all possible. So with all that said, that's a long monologue and typically I don't go that deep without visiting with you guys, but it's an important topic and I wanted to get this back to you guys. I apologize for whatever happened to the Saturday show, but this is the encore show. That's why it says take two. So anyway, let me get with you guys real quickly here. Superior Fit say, hi, look behind you. Let's see. Complex is in saying, good evening, what's up? Some Ferrari guy saying, hey, yo, what's up? I like it. Now he's saying, hey, B, I forgot to ask, would a Thytec head be worth the cost over ported heads? I don't care about dyno numbers. I'm after track times. I don't think so, man. The problem is that your heads already flow a shitload. The modern Hemi heads are flowing well over 300 CFM, no matter which 5.7 you get, and 6.4, 6.2 cars are around 330, depending on what numbers you want to believe. I've even seen as high as 340. So they will support far more power than you will ever be able. You will not outflow those heads. I'll put it to you that way. So I would say probably not unless you're playing with a stroker. Sean E is asking, does the extra oxygen in E85 mitigate some density altitude differences? Not really. Because we've seen, and that's a good point to bring up that I didn't touch on, was E85. The reason why I don't really touch on E85 for NA applications is you can get more torque out of E85, but what happens with E85 is E85, you have to have 30% more fuel to get the same amount of energy out of the ignition. So the more horsepower you're making, the more fuel you're going to be dumping into it. And the problem is that the fuel you're putting in so much fuel, it's displacing oxygen. That's one of the reasons why at some point it's not better, because you've got so much fuel going in that you're displacing more oxygen than you're carrying in with the ethanol. But it doesn't do any good on an NA car up top as far as making horsepower, but it can make more torque. A lot of guys think that you can just throw more timing at it with E85. That's not the case. They're conflating what you can do with a boosted car with a naturally aspirated car. Because naturally aspirated, the timing is what it is. If it wants 25 degrees of timing, it's going to want 25 degrees of timing, whether or not it's E85 or it's gasoline. And if anything, cars that want more timing typically have less efficient combustion events taking place. So it's really not the timing, it's really more the oxygen content, although you can sneak in more timing. The extra timing, a lot of times you just don't see it on the dyno. It just, damn, somebody's getting after it back there. It's just not going to get you a whole lot. Again, a percentage or two, but I mean, no, not even or two. It's like a percentage. But down low, it'll definitely make some more torque, but it will not offset high altitude. However, it will help with boosted, and the reason why it helps with boosted applications is because it allows you to capture timing that you could not get with gasoline. You've got to remember that you are with E85 capturing timing. You're reclaiming timing where you couldn't claim it before with the gasoline. Shawnee's saying, hope this weekend's live stream survived. It did not, unfortunately. Shawnee's saying that his stock 6-speed 392 made 4 1/4 and 422 on a dyno jet. Very common numbers on a dyno jet. Long tube headers, underdrive pulleys, cleaned up intake, throttle body, and his tune on his 392 made 464 at the wheels on a dyno jet. Final price was $100 for horsepower. Exactly. So that's in obviously in his experience, he started off, at 425, ended up at 464. In our hypothetical situation, we were starting off at 400 and ended up at 460-ish horsepower with everything. So you guys can see there's a lot of variance when it comes to those dyno numbers and what they're going to show. Some Ferrari guy on his JLT cold air intake comboed, new intake tune. He's got a lot of work done to that 5.0. Wish he'd dynoed before and after. Yeah, you got to get the baseline. You got to get that baseline. Oh yeah, Shawnee's going to jump on you pretty quick, Ferrari guy. He's got that Mustang he's working on. Katie's saying, what up, Mason? What up, Katie? Hey, Madera's in. What's up, man? Saying, is using alcohol without mixing it with another fuel a good idea? And can you use any proof percentage of alcohol content without pre-ignition rearing its ugly head? Not really, because what ends up happening is you've got to use ethanol. That's one of the bigger issues. And the big problem there is just adding ethanol doesn't solve the problem. You've got to have larger injectors. You've got to have a fuel pump that will actually work with the larger injectors, depending on, if you're boosted. The E85 conversion, you don't have to have pumps, but you absolutely have to have injectors. It won't really make that big of a difference, and I wouldn't really get into the whole fuel alchemy just to see if you can pull something out of the clear blue sky. It ain't gonna happen. We've tested with high quality Ignite E85. We've done all kinds of testing with it. And on the NA stuff for the Mopars, we just weren't gonna get there from here. We've basically come to the conclusion that, unless you build an E85 engine, you're simply not going to, in other words, very high compression, 14, 15, 16 to 1 minimum compression ratios. to fully take advantage of what that E85 can get you in terms of anti-knock, you're not really going to be able to get any real performance gain out of it. So again, you'll pick up a little bit of torque if you're using good E85. And again, the ratio, I mean, if you wanted to brew your own, I guess it wouldn't be too hard. You would take gasoline, non-ethanol blend gasoline, and you would mix it basically 85% volume. It's not by mass, it's by volume. 85% gasoline to 15% ethanol, as opposed to methanol, which you wouldn't want to do. It's ethanol. But you know, if you're talking, you know, what kind, if it's anhydrous or hydrous ethanol, I believe it is 180 proof anhydrous, if I'm not mistaken. In other words, no water. Anhydrous is a term. It's just a fancy word that means does not contain extra water. So anyway, I guess if it's proofed, though, it would have to have another product in it, so that'd be hydrous. Anyway, I'm not 100% sure now. I've confused myself, but there you go. Don't worry about it, so it doesn't matter. Dr. Doe saying camshaft will bring 8 to 15, depending on how percentage points, depending on how aggressive, and no, you give up gain. Gains in the power band. Yeah, it's going to move around. And the other thing you got to remember too is, you know, how the power is going to come in. I didn't really want to get into drivability and questions of tolerance of streetability and what I think is streetable, you might think is rowdy, or vice versa. You know, there's a lot that comes into that. And really, I'm just talking about what kind of power percentages you can expect to get out of what. But Dr. Dick brings up a good point. You know, no matter what, you've got to be able to live with the results that you're working with. And everybody, believe me, and I'm right there with you too, I love seeing the big numbers. I love seeing the big results. I'm more of a drag strip guy. So I like to see the results on the drag strip. I like to see those gains. But what I will say is there is a catch. There's always a catch. And look, I'm going to go ahead and pat myself on the back. There's a couple of cam grinds that I know work really well that, you know, are going to give torque from the hit. But even though they give torque straight from the hit, you can hit them at 2,500 or 3,000 RPM. They're still going to be higher than a stock car in terms of how they're going to hit on torque. But even then, you know, sitting around with a cam that's going to be a little bit racy, some guys get a little bit annoyed with that. So again, be honest with yourself, not just in the short term. Be honest with yourself in the short term and the long term as far as what you are going to be willing to live with on a daily basis. Because believe me, it can be a bit of a pain in the ass. Speed Freak saying, hey, B, thinking of going to E85 for the Hellcat, but I don't drive the car during the Northeast winters for 3 months. What would I need to do to prep it for the winter, drain the E85 or leave it in it? So E85 is not as fickle as you might think. If you're going to let the car sit, obviously they've got there is an E85 stabilizer out on the market, and I apologize for the life of me, I cannot remember what it is, but they do have E85 stabilizers. The trick is to fill the tank all the way to the top. Don't let any condensation get into that tank. Have your stabilizer in the tank, and then when you get ready to drive the car again, go through your normal procedure for bringing a car back from hibernation, tire pressures, fluids, the whole bit. Run that tank completely out of the car. Fill it up with half a tank of E85, run that out, and then fill it back up and go out and have fun. But do not act a fool until you burn at least a tank and a half through that car. Again, but that would be the same for gasoline too. So that's nothing new there. The main thing that you have to worry about though is that E85 sitting with the components without being run. And that's a bit of a problem because it's not moving around, it gets sedentary, and it can really start to eat up certain components. So if you don't have access to race gas, which is the best thing to run or to put in your car, or ethanol-free gasoline would be the absolute best way to go. And that would be to put your tune back to your normal gasoline tune, find a station that sells ethanol-free gasoline or regular gasoline, and have that in your tank instead of E85. Now, all that being said, I brought up E85 first because I know guys that just run their cars on E85 and they never change it out. If you're going to let it sit for any real length of time, though, I just don't like the idea of having 85 in the tank like that. I know what the 85 does to components, and even when you've got the components that are designed to work with the 85, they can sting you. So go back to your other tune, put some gasoline in it. I think it'll be in good shape. Dr. Div saying, hit that like button. Hell yeah, hit the like button. Dr. Div saying, exactly, drag pack and go to the track. Dyno numbers don't mean shit. Exactly. Randy's saying, good evening, B from Middle Tennessee. Very nice. Late to the party buddies here. I like it. Dr. Div saying, Whipple is going to cost about 10 to 12 installed with fuel system and tuning. We are doing one now. You have to have a complete fuel system, tuner, Whipple kit, cooling, and several other sensors. Yeah, in fact, it's funny. I was just talking to somebody today about Whipples, and I'm like, I'm more of a Maggie guy than Whipple. So anyway, is what it is. Hey, Mike's checking in from Eastern Washington. How's everybody going? Good, man. I'm just good for you too, buddy. Ron saying, I can't count how many guys spend all this big money you're describing and their cars are broken within months. Reliability goes down. It can go down. If it's done right, there's no change in reliability other than the fact that you're beating on the car more, presumably. But the main thing is, yeah, I mean, reliability is going to go down if you're beating on it mercilessly. That being said, I've seen stock cars let go. So I don't know. But if you're going to be spending a whole lot of money, bring up a good point. Don't try to go cheap. This is not an opportunity to see where you can save money. Nobody's playing a game of gotcha in this business. At least the reputable shops that I am aware of and that I personally would do business with. We're all trying to put out the absolute best product possible because it's our names associated with it. It's our reputations associated with it. And when, for example, I put together a cam profile and I recommend going with PSI 15, 16 springs and a minimum of 080 hardened push rods and Stanke tie bars and collars. And, I'm recommending all of these things because in my experience, these are not only value adder propositions, but these are durability questions being answered. These are solutions to problems that you can have once you start playing around in this game, where you really start dragging more power out of these engines. So just know that coming into this is not a place to try to save money. God, man. Look, okay, so when you work at a shop, you see the things that never, ever, ever happen, impossible to happen. You see that about once a month, okay? There's no such thing as never happen. There's no such thing as bulletproof. There's no such thing as durable when you work at a shop because you see everything that breaks. And when I say everything that breaks, everything breaks, okay? I don't care. LS, snap, Coyote, boom, Hemi, scatter, you name it, I've seen it break. And for apparently no reason in some cases too. So I say all of that to just illustrate this point. Buy the best quality that you can. You will absolutely thank yourself in the long run. It's cry now or cry later, or rather be sad now or bawl your eyeballs out later when or if something fails. So just saying. Dr. Diff is saying his cost on a Whipple, basically base cost on just the blower is about $7,000. Yeah. Mike's saying, so I'm losing my mind trying to track down a rear end popping noise I'm hearing when going over low speed bumps. All the bushings are good. Everything is torqued. Diff fluid is new. And the dealer even warranted out the shocks. Noise remains. Any ideas? The only question that I have is, does it do it when you're going around corners? If it does, then there's going to be something internal to the rear end that's causing that problem. If it doesn't, then you got to start looking at bushings. You got to start looking at rear trailing arms. You got to start making sure everything is lined up properly. There's going to be an obvious visual inspection, or there's going to be a visual inspection that may not pick up anything that's obvious just to a casual observer. You got to really start picking that thing apart. But popping noises coming from the rear end, unless something is physically loose, which I'm sure that's happened before, it may not be readily apparent. So you need to get underneath there and literally move things around, poke, prod, see what you can find. It could be just an exhaust. If you've got an aftermarket exhaust, that could be bumping on something. But anyway, that's what I would do, get underneath there and see if you can find something moving around. Or look at your carrier bearing. The carrier bearing itself could be moving around, and that could be causing some things Anyway, there's a lot of things moving around underneath there. Don't leave anything to chance. Check them all out. Scatpack's asking, do I recommend the HRT Stage 3 for a 392? It's a little bit on the big side. Probably wouldn't go that aggressive. I'd probably go with something like a Stage 2 if you're looking at the comp, or give Dr. Diff a shout. He can steer you in the right direction on cams. Cody's saying intake, right exhaust, pipe size, and tune would give you a modest 6 to 10 pony gain. That's a nice gain from stock, that's for sure. Yeah, you can kind of get there. And that's about where you'll end up too. Ken's asking, will a Hellcat on E85 run consistent numbers at the drag strip? It will run incredibly consistent numbers at the drag strip, provided the 85 is good. Yeah, it will. Some Ferrari guys hanging out with Sean. KB's asking, how does that Demon Challenger 840 horse claim to work? Do you use race gas like Cam 2 to get that number instead of the 808 on no, what you would do is just use Sunoco GT260 or GT260 Plus. Any of the unleaded variants will get that thing where it needs to be. I know some guys get there with Boostane, that Boostane will actually raise the octane high enough to put it into the high octane mode. And the way that it works is it runs basically on knock sensor voltage. So it makes it kind of difficult to tune, though. That's the only issue with that is if you want to run E85, you're eliminating that feature, and it's only an E85 tune at that point. That's the only downside. But no, it's just how you do it. You just run the race gas. 392 Smoke is in saying, what up? Got the arm flex. I like it. Cody's asking, would a tune help his Escape EcoBoost? Yeah, it would. Anything with force induction will typically get a bump from a tune. 320J saying, Brother B got the fist bump. I think that's a fist bump. I'm not wearing my glasses. Boom, like it. Tuxedo saying, B Mason, how are you? Doing good. Saying he didn't realize there'd be one today. Yep, this is an encore because the live show didn't quite make it to publication for some weird reason. Dr. Doe saying Redline makes a stabilizer for 85. Nice, thank you, sir. Moderna is saying when you get to the point where the car is idle lurches you, know your cam is too hot or the tune isn't right. But yeah, you're exactly right. Doctor is saying, get to start it once a week and get it up to temperature. That'll work. The only downside to that, though, is that you've got to get it to temperature and hold it for at least 20 minutes. And that can be kind of hard for some guys to do if they can't move it around too much. So, but that would be the ideal scenario. Tux is working on his comic strip. Very nice. James asking, where's the Hellcat? Hellcat is at home, bored to tears in the garage because we have been rained out so many times this year. It's looking like we're going to be able to get to the drag strip on Friday. I am hoping that I will be because I'm going freaking stir crazy. But she's at home chilling. Mike saying, I'm beginning to look into an MDS Delete for my 5.7. Are there any bundles or kits you'd recommend when I finally pull the trigger on the idea? So Mopar, I know that, I'll put you like this. HHP has the Mopar MDS Delete kit. It includes the plugs and the different lifters. The thing is if you do an MDS Delete kit, you're pulling the heads off to swap lifters. You might as well just keep going and put a cam in the thing. Because to me, there's really no reason to do a full-on MDS without putting a cam in the car. You can kill MDS in the tune. And that's what most guys typically will do is you just, have the car tuned, kill the MDS feature in the tune, and it just doesn't allow for that feature to work. But you still have the heavier lifters in the car, and I get that can be a bit of a hang up for some guys. What I would suggest is, bit of a wallet check at this point. How deep do you want to go? Again, you're already going that deep into the car. Now's the time to put long tubes on it, full exhaust. Now's the time to get a cam in it. If you're going to be doing that and you're doing that anyway for a cam, you're going to want to just keep going with it. So those are your two options. My suggestion, go ahead and get after it because you're going to be doing for all practical points of view here. You've got maybe another 6 hours in it to put the cam in there. It's going to be worth it. But they're saying, give us a better look at that blue beauty behind you. Well, kind of hard to get you a look on it right now. I'll see if I'll do a walk around on it here in just a minute. Multiple Mopars is checking in. What up, man? What you doing? Under saying, hey, Cody saying, I asked because the tune is set up for towing. Oh, talking about that EcoBoost. Yeah. But dies off in the long run. Oh, you're talking about it kind of noses over. Yeah, I think those things do kind of nose over a little bit. Doctor is saying, yeah, I'm tired of the rain. I didn't want a backyard lake when I bought my house. Yeah, I hear that. Yeah, I know what you mean. Mine's starting to look a lot like Vietnam. I mean, I'll tell you what I'll be doing Thursday. Alberto's saying, made a couple of passes on my Scat Pack with the NT Tri-5 R2s, and I do really like them. Wear like iron also. So I like the Tri-5 R2 from a performance standpoint. I just don't like looking at the things. They are, by all accounts, a small 315. They're really not a 305. And they just don't fit that great on a 10.5-inch wheel, just in terms of contact patch and just wasted rubber on the actual, the tread of the tire, which is, 10.5-inch wheels, what most of the guys run on the backs of those cars. Some run 11s, they fit 11s and nice. But a standard 315/35 fits 11s really nice too. So, I don't know. Right now, my favorite drag radial, street setup tire in terms of looks, is the Mickey Thompson. That thing just looks good. But in terms of just driving the thing around, I mean, I ain't looking at the tire while I'm driving, and those R2s are actually pretty darn good tires. So that said, I don't have a boatload of miles on mine. I'm going to try to get some more time at the drag strip. We'll see what's coming around the corner with other manufacturers, but for the time being, R2, not a bad tire. Mike's saying, yeah, cam headers along with the MDS was the idea. Just wondering if there is a good standard in the business to get it right the first time. It's just the Mopar delete kit, that's all. Tuxedo's asking, have I ever driven a Ram 2500 or 3500 Cummins? Yes, quite a bit, as a matter of fact. The company that I used to work for had one as a shop truck. It's a, what is that thing? It's an 07 or an 08 6-speed truck. So yeah, manual truck. Like driving that thing. James is saying he hadn't had a chance to catch a stream in months. Can you tell me what the 2 new vehicles you have back there? Sure. So that one right there, 92 Camaro TBI car, 305. That's my wife's car. And that is a 1972 3/4 ton GMC C25. If you haven't seen any videos on it, it is the truck from the movie Lost Husband. So I actually was able to get that truck, and it's got a 400 small block in it, and I've been kind of whittling away at it. Dr. Diff did some work to it for me, and she's running good. I've got some app on my phone, and when the truck doesn't have a whole lot of heat in her and I'm able to sneak her out, she'll, on this app anyway, which was real accurate at the drag strip, but I think there is some variability here. But it's showing in the 14s in the 1/4 mile. So again, I don't know how accurate that is, but she will do a really long, really pretty burnout. So that's really all that matters to me. And really, I just putt around in her. But I don't know. Fun truck. Tux is loving him some Cummins. Let's see. Let's see. Racer X is checking in saying, hey, buddy, I'm digging the haircut. Thank you very much. Scott saying, Hoosier DBR still going strong? Yes, they are. Gary saying he likes the GMC, and he's asking, what are my thoughts on the SCT tuner? Cody is, I like them. They're pretty sweet program to learn on. They do a whole lot of good work with Fords, but that's really about it. I'm more into HP tuners, and the SCT stuff is good for the older cars, but I haven't messed with it for the newer stuff, so I couldn't tell you. Dr. Div is asking, how's that weather station work? If you talk about the Crestal, apparently they work pretty good. It's still over here, still sitting in its little case, so need to get that to you. Let's see. And with that, guys, I am probably going to go ahead and wrap it up. Whoa, what the hell just happened here? This thing is pissing me off. Anyway, with that, guys, can y'all see that? That is absolutely nuts. Hang on. Anyway, with that, guys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. Oh, man. I don't know what I just did. I just popped up my screen thing here. I'm just going to put it on normal. There we go. Did that work? That didn't work. What is going on with this thing? Oh, my God. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. Y'all have a great one. Y'all know how it is. If you're going to send it, don't bend it. Keep it shiny side up. Love each and every one of y'all. Could not do this without you. And I cannot wait to see y'all on the next one. And that is a wrap. Adios. Hopefully this thing will stick this time.